question, is Christianity just a crutch? So, Danny, is Christianity just a crutch?
Okay, so to me, it's sort of a yes, but answer. So is Christianity a crutch? Yes, but it is so much more than just a crutch. If you think about what a crutch is, it's something that supports you, that helps you, that aids you in your recovery. So if you break your leg, you're going to need a crutch to help you get around. It's vital. You need it. So when I'm facing a difficult situation, I feel like I've kind of got two options. My first option is I can either rely on myself and my own strength, me who is fallible, undecisive, fearful, doubtful, or I can Constant, who is bigger than all things, who knows exactly what I need when I don't even know what I want for lunch most days. So so I can rely on him. And being a Christian doesn't mean that you get to avoid painful situations, like not even a little bit. But we are promised God's help. There's a verse in the Bible in Psalm chapter 46, verse 1, and it says, God is our refuge, our strength, and ever-present help in trouble. So some of my most real experiences of God have been when I've been at my lowest, at my most vulnerable, when I've had literally nothing left to give, and yet somehow I found the strength to get up and carry on. I think back to specifically when my mum passed away with cancer. She was only 53, she was healthy, she didn't smoke, she didn't drink, she exercised, she had a great relationship with God, and yet she got sick and she was never healed, which is a whole different conversation. But throughout that whole time, I really felt God's presence and his peace upon me, and it was that enabled me to keep going. Was it easy? No, it wasn't easy at all. Pain is never easy, but knowing that I had someone on my side to help me gave me the strength to keep going, made it more bearable, and I suffered terrible anxiety for a period of time after she passed away, and even now it sometimes rears its ugly head. Like if you saw me before we started here, you would know. But in those moments, I've had to rely on God to give me peace of heart, peace of mind, peace that surpasses all understanding, because when you're in that moment of anxiety, nothing makes sense. And so to try and rely on myself to give peace and to find calm, it's impossible. You can't do it. So I have to rely on God and his strength. I think that makes total sense, in that it's kind of logical in that sense, that for you, why would you rely on yourself? You're very aware of your own capabilities, your limitations, even your weaknesses. So when you know you have access to someone who is perfection, to someone who has that strength and is there to walk the journey, then it's almost logical, isn't it, to rely on him. So that kind of, I guess, covers the times when life is not smooth, when there's maybe crisis or that real need for that support. So what about those times when life is just super normal and mundane and there's not this major crisis going on? So what about those kind of times in your life? So for me, faith plays a huge part in my everyday life. It guides me, it shapes me, it helps me to get through mundane, day-to-day living. And the Bible is littered with guidance on how to make the most of the life we've been given. So, for example, you've got the 10 Commandments in the book of Exodus, or there's the Beatitudes in the book of Matthew, which I've just written a blog series on. So if you've not read it,
Shameless plug.
I'm not even shameless. If you've not read it, go read it. It's on our website.
Where can we find that?
On our website, which is www.broadway.im.
Well done. Yep,
to remember
that's right.
So those verses just really enable me to make better choices, choices that are not only going to better my relationship with God, but better my relationship with those who are around me, whether that is like how I react to my 5-year-old asking for his 57th snack in that hour, or the really slow driver that is holding up my journey by a few minutes. Like,
Yeah.
you know, how I respond to what life throws at me, whether it's a big thing or, you know, a good thing or a bad thing, that is all guided by my faith and what I believe the Bible says and how I believe God wants me to live my life to the fullest. But, like, I get it wrong often.
Yeah.
Like, Tim will testify. I don't respond reasonably or calmly or like I'm the adult in the situation. But the joy that we have as Christians is that we are still loved and we are forgiven even when we mess up big time. It doesn't matter, like that love and forgiveness is still there. And that is why faith is so much more than just a crutch. Like, yes, it strengthens you and it helps you, but it gives you a hope and a future and a guidance for day-to-day living. And I don't have it figured out at all, but having a relationship with that God is, it makes it easier.
Yeah.
It makes just the day-to-day living a lot easier.
Yeah.
One thing that we always include in Sunday Live is just to look at what the Bible has to say about the subject that we are covering. And I guess the Bible doesn't say anything particular about crutch. You know, if you did a search through the Bible, you know, the word crutch would probably not appear there. But the Bible does talk about support that we get, and the support's not in the form of something external like a crutch, but it's in the form of a person. And it starts with that recognition that God has not designed us to be independent. Because that's kind of the basis of the question, isn't it? Isn't Christianity just a crutch? Is like saying, can't you just get on and do it on your own without needing God? A verse in Isaiah chapter 30 says this: "This is what the sovereign Lord, the Holy One of Israel says. In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. But you would have none of it." And there God's kind of saying, I want you to lean on me. I want you to find your strength in me. I want to be your support. It goes on to say, but you would have none of it. It's saying you have a choice whether you live your life independently of God or with God at the heart of your life. And Jesus says something a little bit similar, where he says, this is in Matthew's Gospel, and the words of Jesus say, "Come to me, you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So, as Jesus hints here, at a personal level, this is about having the humility to recognize that actually I'm never as strong as God is. And I'm never as wise and knowledgeable as God is. And recognizing that he never intended me to live my life solo without reference to him, without leaning on the strength that he generously wants to give me. Which, by the way, is part of why church is so important. That's the personal level. And then the wider level. This question is, isn't Christianity just a crutch? The fact that God cares for and values the weak and the vulnerable is not something to kind of sneer at. It's actually part of the beauty, part of the glory, I think, of Christianity. So it's never just a crutch. And the more and more, and I guess this ties in with some of what you were saying, Danny, but the more and more I go on through life, the more I realize that I need more than just a little bit of help. It's not like I've broken my leg and I need that crutch to help me until the leg mends. It's a lifestyle thing where I discover that the more I lean my weight on a person, the more I lean my weight on Jesus, the more I find that I have a strength that takes me beyond my own strength, and the more I find that he's never let me down.
So we've had some questions come in, and there's a particular question that has come in that actually also made me think of a quote. So I studied, Bill, I'm going to put this to you. So I'm going to start with you.
Why do I feel scared?
So I studied ethics and philosophy as an A-level, and when we were looking at the question of is Christianity just a crutch, it made me think of some things that I can remember learning, in particular in the realm of Freud and all of the wonderful things that Sigmund Freud said. So the question that came in, and then I'm going to read you a quote that I came up with from Freud. So the question that came in is, why isn't God and religion just a placebo? Why isn't God and religion just a placebo? And the quote it made me think of was, Freud said this about religious beliefs: they are illusions, fulfillments of the oldest, strongest, and most urgent wishes of mankind. So, I don't know, what's your thoughts, mainly, I guess, on why isn't God and religion just a placebo?
Yeah, and that's interesting, putting that with Freud's statement there, because it's kind of pushing into the same thing, that's basically saying, you know, this is something that is fake. It works because you want it to work. It works because you believe it is fulfilling some inner needs, but you might as well believe in fairies or whatever it might be. Yeah, I mean the idea of a placebo that doesn't actually do anything in itself, doesn't have any active ingredients that's going to deal with your ailment, but it works on a psychological level. Yeah. It's like I knew someone who swore that the black fruit pastils were really good for pain relief and better than paracetamol, and no other colour of fruit pastils would do it, but the black ones would. So, you know, great. And if you want to believe that, crack on. That's good. And it's kind of that question is kind of coming from the same sort of place. I mean, I guess in terms of personal experience, I would want to say again and again and again through years of experience now that it's much more than placebo. It's you know, I've seen all sorts of evidence for God at work and for answers to prayer, and there's also kind of a sense in which, if you are following godly principles and that works, and it's what God has said in the Bible are good and godly principles, then you can call that placebo if you like. But it is working, and it's working because that's how God has designed it. And then can you read that Freud quote again?
Yeah, so he says this about religious beliefs: they are illusions, fulfillments of the oldest, strongest and most urgent wishes of mankind. Yeah,
so something kind of similar there, yeah. And I remember reading about Freud saying that religion is about us projecting onto God our needs of a father figure. And the idea that particularly people whose fathers have been kind of absent or missing, which was a big Freudian theme, of course, or even kind of recognizing that for all of us at some point our fathers die, and there's that kind of ongoing need, and maybe similar to Karl Marx saying religion is the opiate of the people. And I think if that was true, if it was a projection of our deepest felt needs, then in that kind of Freudian term, you would expect then for pre-Christian religions, and actually for other religions, to have this strong sense of a loving, present, consistent father figure. And you just don't find it. You know, you'll find hints of it, strong hints of it in Judaism, and that's no surprise, and Christianity has grown out of the Jewish faith. But if it was a projection of our needs, and as I understand it, Freud is saying that's a universal thing, why don't we see that universally kind of in in religions as a kind of sociology of religion. I think the other thing you can do with that, though, is that, to take Freud's statement and to say, if Christians only believe what they believe because they want it to be true, if that's the argument, you can take that argument and flip it the other way around. So Freud was clearly atheist in his viewpoint, and you could just as equally use the same argument to say, well, you don't believe in a God because you don't want that to be true. You don't want to be accountable to someone beyond yourself. You want to be independent. It's interesting that Sigmund Freud had a really bad relationship with his own father, which I just find fascinating with some of the stuff that Freud then focused on in terms of our relationship to father figures. So you could say, maybe this is a cheeky idea, but you could say that Freud was projecting onto God his own disappointments with his own father, rather than recognizing God as a separate entity from our human fathers. So I kind of think that type of argument cuts both ways. And I don't know if I've waffled long and beyond the point again, but yeah.
It was good. And I was thinking, actually, one of my issues, or the things that I have a problem with what Freud is saying, or with this kind of question, is that if Christianity is that crutch, it's that placebo to help us, why create a God like the God we have, who is judge, who is, and he's not this horrible man sat on a cloud ready to smite you or anything like that. Not like that, but why not create someone that just allows us to do whatever we want, whenever we want, and it's not a set of rules that we live by, but I don't know, it's the God that I experience. Part of me thinks that actually it's not an easy life. Like we've touched on, it's not an easy life. There is sacrifice and obedience that is needed. But if we were to create a God to make us feel better, part of me thinks we could probably do a lot better than what we have.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think there's really something in that, because for me, yes, in my faith, there's lots of comfort, there's lots of love, but there's also a lot of demand as well, because the Bible presents God as a holy God, as a God of justice, who doesn't just say, yeah, well, do what you like and come to me when you get into trouble. He looks for that holiness and justice in me, and at times that's scary. Or Jesus, who says, take up your cross daily and follow me. Take up this instrument of execution, and he's saying, I want you to die to your own wishes and desires, and to put me first in your life. So it's not just a kind of a fluffy thing, a placebo thing again. There's something much deeper. So I think you're right. It's not, if you were going to invent something for your own
I think
comfort,
we could do better than probably what we have. Okay, so that's an interesting thought. We'll move on from Freud. I feel like that is a time to move on from
We're
Freud.
Freuded out.
Yeah. Danny, something that you mentioned when you were talking, you mentioned a particular psalm. I don't know if you want to read that for us again, but also just maybe explore where that has come real. You touched on some stuff with your mum, but where that psalm has really come alive for you and been like a real source for you.
Yeah, sure. So the psalm was Psalm 46, verse 1, and it says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. And there's also a similar verse in a book in the Bible called Nahum, and it's Nahum chapter 1, verse 7, and it says, the Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him. And both of these verses have been a source of comfort at one point or another. So 2013, which was the year my mum died, was like the worst year like in the history of all my years. It was the worst one. So obviously mum died. I lost 2 grandparents, and the year was bookended by a miscarriage and an ectopic pregnancy. So it was pretty bad, and it was a lot for my brain to deal with. And I suffered quite badly with health-related anxiety from all of that. And it was awful, and I honestly believe that the only way that I got through it was God pulling me through, and the people that he put around me to help me. So I had a lot of people that would pray with me or pray for me during that time. And like I literally had nothing left in me. There was nothing there. All I could do was cling onto the promises that were in those verses, that God was there to help me, to pull me through. And he did. He gave me a peace of mind and a peace of heart. And it wasn't an overnight fix. Like I didn't suddenly wake up the next day and was like, woo, all's good. It was not like that at all. It was a really long, hard year, maybe more, before I felt any kind of resemblance to pre-2013. But it was the strength that in God and him being with me and walking with me through all of that that helped me get up each day and each morning and just keep going.
Yeah, just, I guess, how do you know he was with you?
I suppose it's like, for me anyway, it's a feeling of just, sometimes it's a feeling of peace.
Yeah.
When everything else around you is just swirling and your brain is just not with it and you can't think straight and decisions are hard and you just feel like you're like a duck in water with the feet. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just a feeling of peace that comes over you of just like, okay, do you know what? I can't think to try and get through this whole situation, but I can think to get through the next minute.
Yeah.
And the next minute. And it's that kind of strength when you've got nothing left, yet somehow you just find the ability to keep going. And I think for me, that's God.
Yeah.
That's God saying, right, I'm going to help you. And sometimes it's through people that he puts around you as well. Like I really believe, like, I'm quite a tactile person. And so not having God like physically there, that I can just be like, there you are. I find that sometimes it's difficult, but I feel like he gives himself to me and other people that can give me that hug or that encouragement in those moments.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Bill, I'm just wondering, you spoke or you mentioned over kind of years and years of experience. So if someone, for you personally, if someone's saying actually your Christianity, your faith is just a crutch, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes back to some of what I was saying earlier, that actually it's not just about what I receive, it is buying into this whole lifestyle where I choose to follow God, and that means to obey what He says, and to me that goes well beyond a crutch. And yet I then find that again and again and again, in the long run, even when I can't necessarily see it at the time, that turns out to be the best way to live my life. You know, who knew that following the Maker's instructions are the best idea for life. But I guess as well as that, it's just seeing times and places where there are answers to prayer. Times when, like Danny says, kind of at the end of your rope, when sometimes you're not expecting it, but you just see God coming through for you in little moments of grace, of goodness. And I think these moments again and again show to me that God is there, that God is real. I mean, I guess if somebody says to me, is your Christianity just a crutch? I think part of that crutch question focuses on the origin of my faith rather than the content of my faith, if that makes sense. So the deeper question is not, am I weak and therefore I need Christianity, when a kind of strong, normal, independent person doesn't need that. You see, I don't think that's the key question. That's focusing on me and my faith, on the origin of it, rather than the content of my faith. So the question isn't, is it just a crutch? The question is it true? And if so, then lean your weight wholeheartedly on Jesus, and discover in him the best way to live.
Great. Just had a question come in that I want to address really quickly. So in a snapshot for both of you, how do you experience God in times of joy? It's a nice question. How do you experience God in times of joy?
You first.
Okay. How do I experience God in times of joy? In so many ways. Sometimes it's, I don't know, out on a walk and just seeing a little bit of beauty, and in that moment recognizing that God has made that, and feeling a joy kind of welling up, and seeing something of the beauty of God in that. I think as well, in times of joy, it's great to be able to have an outlet for that joy. And I often find when I'm really joyful, I want to sing. So you don't really want to be around me when I'm joyful. But I want to sing to God. I want to sing praise songs. And to me, that then, it deepens the joy and it takes it further. So that would be some of how I experience God in joy.
Danny?
Yeah, what Bill said. No, yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because we focus so much on how we experience God when we're struggling, that actually we forget sometimes to recognise God in the joyful moments. And so I think for me, it can be anything from spending time with my family and just have, when you just have those belly laugh moments. For me, I'm not just nicking your answer, but for me, being out in nature as well, particularly by the sea.
Yeah.
I just find such a joy and a comfort and in the power of the waves, but even just when the water is like perfectly calm and still, and you just think, wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So yeah, nature, it's
great.
I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Hey, how you feel joy and experience joy with God. No one can argue with that. We're going to move into a time of prayer. But before we do, Danny, for you to bring some thoughts, that if someone is listening to this, whether live or later in the week, if they're thinking about following Jesus, if they're thinking about making a commitment to him, what would you say?
I'd say absolutely do it. It will change your life. Will you suddenly be free from painful experiences or struggles? Probably not. But you will have someone who is always on your side, and that you can lean on, and to help you walk through whatever it is that you're experiencing. I remember we used to have a poem on the back of our toilet door when I was growing up, and it was the Footsteps in the Sand poem. If you don't know it, look it up. But basically it was about a man who had a dream, who was walking along the beach with God, and he noticed that anytime there was problems, there was only one set of footprints, and he kind of thought, well, God's just left me alone to deal with this all by myself. But actually the footprints belonged to Jesus, and he was carrying the man in those times. And I really believe that applies to all of anybody who follows Jesus. In the book of Deuteronomy 31:6, it says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." And that is the promise that awaits all of those who want to commit to God. The promise that you will never have to face anything by yourself. So, yeah, go for it. That's what I would say.
Great.
I love that. I love that verse, that description. He will never leave you or forsake you.
Yeah.
And that's something that I just find again and again I come back to and find comforting and find so true in both in these kind of joyful moments and in these end of the rope times, and for the just kind of the most normal, as you say, mundane, day-to-day times, knowing that that he is with me.
Thank you for joining us this week. If you enjoyed any part of what any of us had to say, but Danny in particular, then please do hit the like and subscribe and tickle the notification bell. That would be great. And then you would be sure to catch any other broadcasts that do go out, which will be next Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. And then we will be back here next week at 7:30 p.m., where we will be kind of drawing to a close our big questions that we've been answering. And we're going to be looking at faith proved real. So be sure to join us next week, either here, live, in person, in the room at Broadway Baptist Church, or again, online, where you can find us in the same place. Thank you very much for joining us. Bill, thank you for joining us as always. And Danny, your wisdom and your input that you gave us. So thank you very much to Danny for sharing. And once again, thank you to all of you who have joined us in the room and online. I hope you have a great week. God bless and good night.